So hello, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Judith Tauber. I'm 71 years of age and I was born in the Lake District.
You grew up in mainly the 1960s, so do you want to give me just some differences between just what life was like in the 1960s compared to life now?
We, as children, we had a lot more freedom than we do now. We used to play in the fields, we used to play at the river, and we would be out for hours and hours, and our mums and things were happy. We all played in a big gang of kids.
So what about school in the 60s? What was that like?
School probably wasn't that different from now, but it was quite strict.
So like you say, I was quite strict. What were the kind of punishments that were around if you did something bad?
In junior school, there weren't any punishments as such. But when I went to a grammar school, the boys still got the cane if they were naughty. The girls just got detention. But, corporal punishment was still allowed.
The 60s was a time of lots of different events happening, and one of them was the Cold War. So did that have an impact on your life as such, or was it just a distant thing that was happening in different areas of the world?
It had no impact on a child. You must remember or be aware that the only news medium that we had was the BBC News. There weren't any computers, there was no media at all apart from the BBC News. So yes, we might hear something on the news, but even then it wasn't particularly major, and we were kids that were 8 to 15, and things like that didn't really impact on us.
So speaking of the news and TV, how was it with, obviously there was very few TV channels, so what was it only being able to watch certain programmes at the exact time they were on?
Because we didn't know any different, it was just what it was. We had one channel, we had the BBC, nothing else. So if you wanted to watch television, and that was it, But because, as I say, we knew no different, that was a huge improvement on what the situation had been, say, when in the 50s, people didn't have televisions. I mean, in my family, we didn't have a television until I was 8.
So you previously touched upon being able to play outside for hours a day and things like that. Were you the first generation to really be able to do that, or had it been done before by your parents' generation?
I think that it had been always just the way people lived their lives. My parents had huge amounts of freedom, and that we possibly had a little bit less, and then as time went on, I think it was more and more restrictions were introduced.
Did your parents ever get worried that anything could happen to you when you were miles from your house?
I don't think they did really. It was just the way we were all brought up.
So obviously the 60s was a time of quite cultural change. Well, so how religious would you say just the general society of the time was?
Well, of course, completely different today. The only two religions that were apparent to me were Church of England or Catholic, and school, it was primarily a Church of England school, but we had special assemblies for the Catholic people. I did get confirmed, and I was made to go to Sunday school when I was a child, but religion didn't really mean anything to me. It wasn't something that was particularly important in my family.
This was obviously a bit before the 60s, but there was also like the Windrush movement and all of that. So when did society start to change from being like a very primarily like white British society to the like big melting pot of cultures it is today?
If you lived in the north of England, you would never have heard of the Windrush problem. Where I lived, there was not one single black person in the 60s. Towards the end of the 60s, an odd Chinese person would open a restaurant, and we started to get some Indian doctors at the hospital. But apart from that, I would say the population of Cumbria was probably 99.5% white. So we weren't aware of any cultural diversity or anything like that.
What period in time would you say that that started to change?
Where we live, not until maybe the 80s, the 1980s.
Another big event of the 60s was the moon landing. So did you hear of that at the time?
Yes. Yeah, we were glued to the news. But there again, I must reiterate, that was our only source of news. And I think that would be very difficult for people now to really comprehend. We are bombarded with news from everywhere. But in those days, it was so completely different.